My dudes, last week I announced my Twilight Monk Metroidvania that I've been working on. I'm getting a little bit more diligent about working on it. A lot of you were like, whoa, dude, how do you do that? So I thought I'd make a video explaining some of my process. So obviously I have like a real-time video of almost every painting I do over on my box set of videos over on my Gumroad channel, but I wanted to do a layer breakdown so that you could maybe make environments for your own hand-drawn video games. Or perhaps if you're just doing concept art for 2D games. I've been considering doing a programming tutorial on Game Maker Studio for making a similar type of a game. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. But for now, let's just take a look at the layer breakdown for this painting. This is the final result that we're looking at here. So the first up, what we have here, this is a color balance layer. I have two color balance layers apparently. Why did I do that? Okay, so this one is, if you look at the slider over here, it looks like I added just a little bit of blue to the midtones. If you want to create your own color balance layer, you'd go down here to this little half moon, click on that, and then use a color balance right there, bam. And once you have that up, you can adjust just the darker values by shadows. Midtones are like middle ground, and then highlights would be like your lighter values of your whole piece. You can adjust that. So like, let's say that I wanted to just add a little bit more yellow to my midtones, boom. Like that's one way to get an overall color shift, if you want to change the whole mood of your image. And I've done that. I don't know why I did it on 2 layers. I think I just, and really drove home that blue. I ended up going, yeah, I want to commit to the blue. Because I could have just done 1 layer that had just more blue in it, and that actually achieves the same goals. So this is just sloppy on my part. I think I meant to do a levels layer. But whatever the case, let's switch it off. And then here, this is my snow. It's just on a layer that's set to lighten because I just didn't want to use a brush. So I literally just took a screenshot from the in-game snow and then I set that to lighten, and anything that's light is going to show up. This was just for the mock-up for the YouTube video, and that won't be there for the in-game shot. Now, if you're making assets for a platformer, you don't want, especially if it's like a HD platformer like this, where everything's hand painted, you really don't want your snow flattened onto the image. I've made that mistake with some of the other paintings I did for this game. Make sure that you're doing everything on separate layers because your snow is going to be generated by code. It's not even drawn into the environment. So make sure that you don't flatten your snow onto the artwork layer. The other thing here, this is very subtle, but this is an ambient light. And now this is set to color burn, but watch what happens when I turn it off. I'll switch it on and off real quick. It's a dark color that fills the whole screen, and then I just erased out where I want the focal point to be. I can move the focal point. So I filled the whole thing with like a flat black. Then I dropped the opacity down to 45%. And then I just hit it with an eraser where I wanted it to be highlighted. Like, look, let's say I want a little highlight down here. I would hit that with an eraser. And you see how, because everything else in the image is darker, whatever you erase out is where your eye is going to go. So this particular shot, basically, because of the way it's laid out, everything flows towards this center point. This is the worst arrow. I need what? I can't draw arrows. So yeah, I'm doing it the wrong way. Okay, maybe it's because I'm using a sausage. I don't know why I can't draw. But anyway, my circle is good. Look at that. Our eye goes here because the character's there. Let's say that I flipped this. Let's say transform. Let's say I flipped that. Now it's weird. It's like, why am I looking here? There's no character here. There's just this lamp. A lamp with a missing chain, apparently. Oh, it's a glitch. So essentially, I'm just simulating the basic lighting that I'm going to have in the game, and there's not a complex lighting engine in this game at all. So we got it here where the viewer's eye is looking at where I want the viewer to look. And then, of course, Raz is on his own layer. And this is the same sprite as the in-game Raz, and I put it in my concept because I'm like, well, I want to make sure that the scale of all of my objects in the scene are pretty close to the scale of the character. Keep that in mind. And sometimes it's really easy to get lost in the scale of your scene. Like, I don't want my lanterns to feel like they're, 800-pound lanterns, although that could be interesting. But my point is more like, having your character in your concept shot, like every time I do one of these paintings that's going to be, for a new location in the Twilight Monk platformer, I want to make sure that I'm drawing everything to scale so that I'm not, later having to make huge adjustments or anything like that, because I'm literally going to export every one of these. Like, look, check this out. All of that is on its own layer. But eventually I'm going to have to cut out every one of those platforms or try to break it down into the smallest pieces and then import those pieces into Game Maker Studio, including every one of these lanterns. So I'm only going to have one lantern, and then two lanterns because I got one in the background. And then I'm going to have probably a little subtle sway to them because I want it to feel like there's wind blowing through here. I want a real feeling of like a cave, and that's why you're getting all this subtle ambient light going on in the backgrounds. But this is all pretty much the same values. So like if you notice, I don't think it quite goes all the way to black. Yeah, it's like 90% black. Very saturated, lots of blues and purples in the subtleties of the dark values. Look at this. This is definitely in the blue range. Yeah, look at that. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, you get a little bit more of the greens and yellows. There's little hits of yellow back there in the background, but we'll get to that in a second. So this is the mid-ground layer, and it's just the cave wall. And I did that on a separate layer so that I can have some parallaxing. When you're in the concept phase, you still want to think about reuse. So for instance, you want to get as much mileage out of every part that you design as possible. So you'll notice I got 3 of these variants of these little platformers. I might end up having to make like 3 or 4 more actually. So those are things for you to keep in mind. If you're like designing a scene like this, you probably want to like sketch everything out just as like a little gameplay test. Like, well, let's see, I could imagine the character jumping down here and like, could he break through this thing, or is that going to get in the way? Like, you do have to kind of think about gameplay when you're designing something like this. Even though I'm not doing any game design here beyond just, are these, vertical platforms or more flat areas? Is this going to be an area where I've got enemies that are on the ground? It's a good idea if you're designing is sort of separate from your art phase. You really have to wear a lot of hats, and it's best if you already got your environment design already set up. You already know, do you need tight corridors or big open spaces? These are like little tombstones, and I wanted to tell just a little bit of a story, but these are basically just gravestones, and they're sort of meant to give the player a feeling that like this place had some kind of a function or purpose. You'll notice that I have all of my backgrounds pretty much down on one layer back here, except for those lanterns, which I kept on a separate layer. Those should technically be in like the foreground 2 area. All of these pieces end up getting sliced out and then exported as PNGs, which then get put into Game Maker Studio. But for the most part, like this is the farthest background, and I may end up having to cut out like this. Oh wait, there we go. I may end up having to like cut out this so that I can get a little bit of parallax and some smoke back here rolling through or something like that. Or if I really want to get some extra layer of movement or depth when the player is moving the camera, I may have to do something where there's yet another layer so I can get some cool parallax back there. It's kind of a build-up process, and a part of me is, as I'm like doing the concept for it, I am starting to kind of figure out, oh, do I want more parallaxing in the background? Do I want to get like some story element into this scene or into this environment? Things like that. For the most part, if it's your first concept for a new location, you want to be as broad and general as possible. Don't have points of interest like, oh, that really unique looking statue. That's not necessary in your general sort of cave part number 52. You're looking for universal pieces here. The building blocks, the shape language, the core construction of any architecture that might be in the environment, and how those natural elements will fit into it. And then you figure out how to make them unique and interesting in specific rooms. And, I may end up going back in and like creating a new part that I need. But the nice thing about this is like, I know what the architecture is. This is the same architecture that's used in the catacombs for the most part, and the same architecture that's used in the dragon catacombs area. So like there is a sort of like a familiarity of shape language and consistency, but it's still going to have its own unique elements, which are like the ice and the snow and the cave backgrounds and the colors. So you can see how that could kind of come together. So that's essentially the layer breakdown of, the concepting phase, and at least the start of designing a new location in the concept phase. But let's see how it looks in game. Now look at this. Okay, this is Game Maker Studio. Hey, you said you wanted to see how the sausage was made. You said you wanted to see it. This is the screen that I'm looking at every day. So I'm showing it to you, all of it. Here you go. This is like background layers. I have parallaxing set up. I have some atmospheric layers. This just adds a little blue to the background. This is adding a little bit of green fog to the bottom, and that's actually got a little bit of horizontal speed set to it. This is my gameplay layer that has all of my collisions. Man, if we turn off our tiles and other things, you can really see all that gray box stuff. That's all the collisions. That's the actual collisions. And I'll probably have to tighten it up even and give it more detail because, yeah, you got like projectiles and enemies that are going to be flying around. And if they collide with something, they're not colliding with the graphics. They're colliding with the collision boxes. Anyway, enough of that, Larry. Let's play it so you can see what this room looks like in actual gameplay. So when we're testing our art assets, we're not concerned about game design. That's a different hat. That's a different job. That's not our job right now. Our job right now is to make sure that our art looks cool. Can I add more lanterns to this little spot here, or more hanging ropes, or animate this little part here? Are my environments parallaxing correctly? Are we getting glitches? Are there elements of the art that are blocking the gameplay? Does it feel atmospheric? Does it capture pretty close to what that original concept was? Do I need to zoom the camera out? Are the background elements really separating nicely from the foreground elements? You know, do I need more color variation between the foreground and the background? Do I need more atmospheric like fog and plumes of smoke and things like that? And so like this is first phase of doing an art pass on an environment. I haven't even gotten to like, yeah, the little poofs of snow that are gonna pop up when you land in the snow. Like just as we have to do a sketch when we do artwork for a painting, you know, so that we lay out our groundwork before we go and invest tons of time into something, we also have to do that with our art assets in game. You know, we don't want to go ahead and just put all this energy and focus onto one little tiny little platform and bring that up to a, 100% before we've got, parts that work in a general sense across all environments in this setting. I'll cover a little bit more of game design and some of those detailing things like what I was talking about, adding animations and flourishes in another video. But for now, that's a very shortened version of about maybe 4 days worth of work for designing like at least the beginning of a new location for a game like this. And dudes, I know you can click on some video where some guy says he made GTA 6 over the weekend because Rockstar wouldn't. And that's got 2, 3, 4 million views on it. And a video like this isn't going to do anything like that because this is the real thing, man. And games take a long time to make and I'm enjoying the process. I'm totally cool with sharing the real deal with you. If you want to know more about how games are made, don't forget to subscribe and definitely check out my Gumroad box sets of tutorials if you want to learn to paint better or see more layer breakdowns or real-time recordings of just about every painting that I do. Also, don't forget that you can wishlist Twilight Monk over on Steam currently, so head on over there and add it to your wish list. Thanks. All right, dudes, that's it for me this week. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.